Here we go. I want to welcome James-Olivia back to my podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Right before I hit record, they and I were talking just about, I love what you just said, not having to be ready. James-Olivia was crying a bit because of a loss or situation that occurred. However you want to, I'll let you tell us, like, what are you feeling right now?
Our family had a really big loss, and it's fresh. And I cry a lot anyway. I mean, that's not a new thing. But these are big cries. I don't think I've had a cry like this in a decade at least. So, and it's good to be here. So both things are true.
Yeah. I think it's so important that we can be where we are. You're allowed to cry here as much as you want to. Need to. It's beyond one. It's like whatever comes through.
Yeah. I don't know that my tears care whether or not I'm allowed to. They're coming regardless.
Ooh, you have a good body. I think you do. It's right before we got on here, I was thinking of how you often in your work it says like nurturing disobedience.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, this is actually what nurturing disobedience looks like, because culturally there's this reflexive constriction when we have emotional expression. So the fact that that's not happening for you is really beautiful for me.
Yeah. I don't always like it, and I'm growing more and more comfortable with it. The less and less I try and imagine that I have any control over it. Yeah, the less restriction I put on myself, the easier it is for me. But I was sobbing in the airport. It was I've never been so happy to wear a mask. Just because my whole face was contorted in the ugly cry.
Oh yeah.
In the airport. I was just so grateful. I was like, oh, at least nobody can see my mouth twisting up like this.
I find crying so gorgeous, like it's interesting. I'm just trying to think of for myself. Like I'm a really big crier, like when I'm moved by something, right? Like
Same.
So if I see someone telling the truth for the first time,
Yeah.
like I just like I can't hold it back. And for a long time, I kind of trained myself to not cry because I'm, quote, the therapist, And in the last few years, I've been dismantling that position even more into like an educator and a facilitator, so it can be more like equal footing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll have these groups sometimes, and people will be telling these truths, and the tears are just flowing out of my eyes, and the only thing I really do is mute so I can blow my nose. So I'm not, so I'm not like sounding over them in their profound moment. But it's really nice to let yourself just be there, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Not always for me. And also, it's just less internal conflict and contortion. And I get through it a lot more easily. Like Ben and I woke up this morning and we looked at each other and asked, how are you doing? How are you doing? And we both said, I think the big tears are over. Like the big, just gut wrenching, like heart shredded tears have passed because we both just let it come over us.
See, I find crying in response to grief so interesting. Because for me, grief is always love. It's just, to me, there's no different. It's just, right, a different mechanism. And when I think of it somatically, if I love you, or I love an animal, or I love a tree, there's this extension of hugging or projecting that at the said object or person or being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's soothing, isn't it? It's like the overwhelm of love. We get a break from it when we have the person there to call or imagine is there. It's just knowing they exist even.
Yeah.
and then when they leave this form and they're not physically there to throw our love at, it's like we're stuck with all of our love, and I find it so overwhelming. That's how I experience grief.
Yeah, that is what it has been feeling like. And it's so fresh. This is like less than 48 hours. So I'm not necessarily speaking intelligibly about it. But I
Good.
was telling you right before we hit record, this little cat showed up on our doorstep last night. It was a snowstorm. It wasn't like we were out looking for a like, here, come and be the recipient of our love. Let's impose our love on you. But but it's been a snowstorm upstate New York, and this cat was just meowing incessantly under our window. And I've never heard this before, probably because Lucy would chase them away ferociously. But it was just meowing and meowing and just crying. It was just crying for what felt like hours. I don't think we would have left a cat outside in a snowstorm for hours, but it felt like too long. And it just jumped into our house when we opened the door, and was the friendliest, sweetest. It was just like, here, I will come and soothe you for this evening, for this full moon in Cancer, and then take off. And so it took off this morning. Like, Ben opened the door and it was just like, all right, see ya, snowstorm's over, I'm good.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing.
It's I can't even, like, I don't think that I could have requested something like this on purpose.
You know, one thing I'm always talking about is how there's support everywhere.
Mhm.
And it's so hard to see that, when you're in the trenches of grief or anger or
Yeah.
pain. But there is all this, like, and that's what's so great about being having an animistic lens, is you get to
Yeah.
look at all the places that love you. And
Yeah.
that cat was one of the beings I was able to come in and receive and give and co-regulate and all these beautiful
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
And I'm a moon in Cancer, so I felt the moon this week hardcore. So I love the image of just this snowstorm. I'm also in upstate New York. I love this image of the moon out there. I saw the moon last night. It's just, I love this whole experience you got to have.
Yeah. So do I. And in the midst of all of this, like, my heart is just aching so much, and there's so much beauty and
Mm,
support.
mm.
It's it is astounding to me, the way the universe works.
It really is. It really is. And oh, I think I'm learning more and more every day that I don't have to understand it. There that's why
What a
I'm actually
relief.
what a fucking relief. And it's why I wanted to have you here, specifically for today, was
Mhm.
to, like, what happens when we release our understanding, and we're just in it.
Yeah. Um, oh, was that the question? I hope I don't have to answer that one. Good.
No, not a question for you. Well, I thought actually maybe I could I wanted to read your inquiry that you posted a little while back in December, that really inspired me, and I did a podcast episode and featured it. You gave me permission. I read your post, and I just wanted to read just the simple question you posted, and I wanted to kind of sit in it together and see where it takes us. Um, you wrote, "Where do I abandon the body and grasp at supremacy of the mind?" And I just thought it was such a great way to ask the question. And I
Yeah.
just want to know what that even right now, maybe during this situation, like, what does that mean to you?
Um, well, supremacy, I mean, I think of relationship and right relationship through the lens of supremacy culture a lot, because that's the dominant over culture that we inhabit together for the most part. And it doesn't work very well for creating right relationship. It's not very easeful, and there's not very much flow of the love and the care and the support, and the experience. Just like having an experience and being in it. And a lot of this inquiry actually came out of the 6-week course with you. I think the first time I heard the word embodiment, I was like, ew, no thanks. That sounds terrible. I do not want this experience. I don't know how many years ago it was. But I was like, oh, somatics. You mean I have to feel this thing below my neck? Like there's a lot going on there and I don't really want any. Like it's been a long time since this felt really joyful. Like I'm either going for satisfaction or pleasure or avoiding pain, but just being in the experience and knowing like in this incarnation, this is how I experience, this is how I interface with the world. This is how my spirit gets to navigate this plane. And if I'm not in it, I miss not everything. I still have my brains, my wits are, grief brain, not okay. But for the most part, I'm really pleased with my brain and how it works. And I rely on it a lot. I rely on my mind quite a bit. And it doesn't always tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always tell me the truth of my experience. And it's very, very busy trying to make sense of things. And it likes certainty and it likes control. And supremacy culture likes certainty and it likes control. And when my brain is running amok trying to control the experience of my body, it's not really relating. I'm not really in right relationship with my own self. There's a misalignment. Information is seemingly going only one way. Not really, but the brain's not listening. Like the mind's not listening to the body. And my body tells me really, really important information. Had I not in this last 2 days surrendered to the tears, I would have missed so much of the love. It would be pain without purpose for me. And when I just let my body feel what it was feeling, which was painful, it also felt very expansive. Like so much of the time when my heart feels broken or my feelings are hurt, I get very constricted and I hold a lot of tension in my body. I don't listen to it. I don't listen to it telling me no for a lot of things leading up to an event or a rupture. And I find that the more I listen, the more I just be with myself in my body. And these are baby steps. I just took your course in October. So this is only months ago. And not that I was not ever paying attention before then, but that there was an event in September and it sat me down and that's when I DM'd you and I'm like, please tell me, I know registration's closed. Please tell me there's one more seat I can have. I must be paying attention. But yeah, supremacy of the mind for me takes me out of the experience of being alive. It's very tidy, but I miss the experience of being alive and I miss a lot of the love.
That's a lot, I'm just kind of sitting with that. It's so profound. I love when you said, I'm going to say it the way I heard it.
Yeah.
You said something essentially like, see, this is so funny. This is right. It's happening right here. My mind is trying to grasp at what I call reality, which is what you said. And I'm losing the feelings I had, Yeah. So it's like, if I just sit with the feelings first, it's just this beautiful, warm, opening sensation all through my body, like coming from my chest and heart area, just over my shoulders and down my belly and my legs. And it just feels so gooey and like, I know that, like, there's a familiar kind of core sensation. And what I heard you say was, I'm not relating. When I'm grasping at the mind, I'm not relating.
Yeah.
Literally, I just experienced that. You know, these sensations are me relating to you as I look into your eyes through the screen and I hear you talk about your experience and I feel it. It's like my physical body, the animal of my body, that neck down, you were
Mhm.
that creature from the neck down that we avoid. Um, it's like it starts to express and unfurl. It feels like a blossoming, you know, like just like a flower. It really does feel that way. And then when I'm going to my mind to try to figure it out or organize it or get, like you said, like specific, predictable control, which is again the colonization of the psyche in and of itself,
Yeah.
I'm losing. The sensations go kind of gray. They just kind of, they're
Hmm.
gone. They're offline. And I just find that so profound to express and experience that difference of when does my mind or the focus or grasping, like I love your term, grasping my mind, pull me out of feeling in my body,
Yeah.
right?
And I don't think it's in the best case scenario for me. My best experience is it's not either or. It's when it is either or and it's like, oh, the supremacy of one or the other.
Yes.
That's when I lose, because I don't want to lose, literally, I do not want to lose my mind either.
No, no, we don't.
I like this thing. It's so much fun. I have so much fun in there. Um, and I'm I'm going to quote my friend Katie. She says, "I'm a greedy little self. I want everything."
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think it's actually very important you're saying this because it's not about body supremacy either.
Mhm.
It's not about like supremacy is supremacy and it creates imbalance either way you go. And I think I've worked and been the kind of person that suffered from hypochondriasis, for many years when I was younger. And that was literally being ruled by every sensation in my body. I didn't have
Yeah.
the mind to even soothe the body. It was gone. It was just dropped into this terrifying sensation of the nervous system. That was all. And then I've also dissociated and dissociated from the body, I should say, and left the body and just
Mhm.
was in the mind while my body was kind of screaming for me.
Yeah.
So when you say relationship, I think it's the perfect expression because the mind, as I see it, relates to the body and the body relates to the mind. It's this constant back and forth, which is actually quite spiritual, I guess, when you philosophize it, because you realize I'm not the body. I'm witnessing the body, but I feel the body. It's such a strange relationship, but it is a relationship. Uh, how do you feel that? How do you witness or experience the body as like a being other than you? Do you even?
Um, I'm this is new for me, and I'm also doing the same thing with the mind, like with my thoughts. So when thoughts are, because I have all kinds of thoughts that I hate. And not that I'm judging them, like I don't hate them as in like that's a terrible thought, but that I don't enjoy. They're not pleasurable thoughts. Um, and so both the mind and the body for me now, I'm just like, oh, okay, so that's doing a thing. Like
Yeah,
this is,
yeah.
so that's happening right now. Um, I I was actually just telling my friend Amanda this the other day. We were visiting each other. I don't know if you or anybody who's listening watched the show Firefly.
No.
It's a sci-fi show and it's just delightful. It was a very short one season show. And the characters were really, really sweet. And there's a birth scene. And in in a birth scene, one of the characters is basically acting as the doula for um, this person giving birth. And she says, and the person giving birth is just in agony. And the person acting as doula says, this is just a moment. All you have to do is get out of the way and let it pass.
Mm.
And sometimes there are moments, because I do have a lot of sensations. I attribute some of it to being on the autism spectrum, that things are very heightened for me, and sometimes in ways that I really don't find pleasant. And so I talk myself through them. I'm like, okay, this is part of the experience of having this body, and this is just a moment. And you don't have to get in the way of it.
Mm. So even that phrasing, right? Like you don't have to get in the way of it. It just keeps positioning this experience or belief or whatever it is I'm so interested in, that it is not me. You know, it's something that I'm experiencing. It's something I connect with, right? Like, but the I is whatever the energy, the witnesser. But there's something I connect with, and you can't help that this body you're in experiences overwhelm from certain sensations. That's something very sovereign about your body.
Yeah.
I just find it amazing to drop into that, you know, like the yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So you said this thing in your class, the sovereignty of the body. And that phrase has stuck with me. It carries over. I took a grief literacy class with Being Here Human last year as well. I really, really love their work too. And I learned this thing about grief, and I'm so glad I know this now today, that the body is metabolizing loss, and you don't get a say. It's going to do what it's going to do. You just like you eat a pizza and you don't really get a say about what your stomach is up to as you're digesting this food, or you gestate a fetus. You don't get a lot of say. Like, your body is doing things to take care of you, to metabolize, to generate, to restore itself, to do whatever it does, to rest. And I know that we get a lot of say in how we experience something, like the meaning we make of it, and how much suffering or pleasure we attach to it. But the body's just doing shit on its own. It's fantastic. And I don't get a say in what this thing is up to most of the time. I get to move it around. I get to nourish it. I am responsible for stewarding it, but I don't control it.
I mean, that's where it is for me. You know what you just said. It's like it's doing shit all the time that I don't have a say in. You know? And it's such a medicine, you know, that phrase, and like practicing that, because it changes the entire game of life, you know. And that's what happened for me when I realized that. It changed the whole game of life, because all the shame dissipated, the pressure around controlling parts of me or identifying with parts of me, it all just kind of just fell, because it just became so true. I couldn't stop seeing it as, oh, it's doing its own thing. I have nothing to do with this thing it's doing. I have everything to do with how I relate to the thing it's doing. But the thing it's doing is the thing it is doing. And
Yeah.
imagine, right? Like culturally, to grasp at that, or to release the grasp of the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And breathing. Like, I don't know if you even want to get started with breathing, but I'm so fascinated
Absolutely, go for it.
by the fact that I get to breathe myself, but I don't have to.
Believe me. Bereave me. I completely get it. It's so far out. I mean, there's times I'm sitting here when I'm very embodied, and I feel the air moving through my nose, in through my skull, and I'm like, what? This is so trippy. This is like the most virtual reality experience I could ever imagine. It's
Yeah.
so intense, and I'm not doing it. It's doing it to me. It's moving through me. It's like growing
Unless I
hair.
am.
Unless
Unless I
with
am doing
breathing,
it.
right? Yeah.
Like that's the thing
Right.
with breath. It's so wild. It's like one of the things that, oh, I get to actually do this on purpose if I want to,
Mhm.
in the way that I want to.
Breath is actually a great example here because of its autonomy. And then there's
Mhm.
also the how do I relate to it? Like it's going to breathe its own way. Many people, when they're doing this kind of embodiment work or somatic work, and you say, "What's your breath like?" They didn't even notice that the breath was labored. The body was doing that, and then they're like, "Oh, I can relate to that labored breath. I can make it go a little deeper. What is that like?" That's really what we're doing, isn't it? Noticing and then relating. How does that intersect for you with self-inquiry, which is so mind-based?
Oh, this might sound a little wild. So my friend and I had a wonderful lesson with some golden teacher mushrooms this past weekend. And so everything's a little expanded for me in a way that it wasn't a week ago. That with back to back gigantic loss, I don't know if the timing could have been any better. Um, Self inquiry for me isn't just an end unto itself, it's actually a means to loving more expansively. So the questions for me are a way for me to peel back the curtain of my own mind. Like, what's in the way here? And normally, my questions are about how I'm relating to myself and the world and to other people, and what's getting in the way of right relationship. I say that. I can go back through my Instagram. That may or may not be true. We'll find out.
Everyone here is invited to go check right now.
Fact check me.
Go fact check them. So when you say that, I find that interesting, that it's a way to pull back the curtain to see, what's in the way of me relating, right? Like what's getting
Mhm.
in the way of this relationship that could be, or that is without this. Do you find that for you, a lot of the blocks of relating comes from thoughts you haven't questioned yet? Are they unconscious? What is that like for you?
Off the top of my head, I want to say 100% of the time. That may or may not be true. Um, my One of my biggest teaching experiences, like teaching me experiences, not me teaching, is my relationship with Ben, like living with this other person. Um, and also my relationship with Lucy. Actually, my dog, who just passed, she has taught me more about unconditional love in the last 5 years than I think any any other relationship in my life in a concentrated period of time like that. But she didn't speak English. So Ben is the one who gets to reflect back to me what I'm up to most of the time.
Hmm.
And and I like to think that my questions can be somewhat sophisticated, but he'll just put things in my face pretty bluntly. Like, um, I'm trying to think of things that he's asked me. Like, he has straight up asked me stuff about how I'm relating to him. Like, don't you see the domination in this? And I'll just be like, you wound me. But it's true. Like, he will absolutely call me out on stuff that that doesn't feel good to him, and he'll put it into words and just say, like, this is a thing that I'm seeing. It doesn't feel good to me. How does it feel to you? And I'll be like, oh, wow, that it felt really crappy when I said that, and I wasn't sure what I was up to.
Well, isn't your whole practice of self-inquiry giving you the muscle memory of like, maybe I should question this? Because
Mhm.
because if you never do self-inquiry, you just believe everything you think. I know I did, I
Yeah.
should say. So but then when you're doing that and then someone says like, whoa, what you said was really hurtful, you're not like reflexively, no, I'm not, you asshole. You're kind of like, was what I said hurtful? How do I feel about what I said? You just go into
Yeah.
questioning, right?
Yeah. And so you asked about sort of how the mind and body are um, relating to each other here. It's getting faster and so Ben and I have been together for 7 years now. It's becoming a quicker turnaround, so that things that he's pointed out before, now I can recognize the same sensation in my body, and I can look at him and I can ask him first, like, how did that feel to you? Because it felt hinky to me
Hmm.
when it came out of my mouth. What was that like? And he'll say, oh yeah, I didn't really like it very much. It's not something he would have necessarily said anything about, but he'll say, I'm glad you asked. It didn't feel wonderful. And I'll say, okay, yeah, I can see that. I was up to some shit.
Hmm.
Um, like in little ways that I try and, manipulate or
Hmm.
dominate or control, like to get what I want rather than just asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love when you put it so simply. I could just ask, but maybe I'm going to manipulate a little bit to get there.
But yeah, just these habituated manipulations, and rather than like, hey, I want a thing. And these are the thoughts too, like, I'm not allowed to want that thing. I'm not allowed
Yes.
to I'm not allowed to just sit here on the couch and want you to get up off the couch and get me a cup of water.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, that's selfish and lazy and, you know, whatever. Like, I can place all kinds of judgments on it. And these are the thoughts. And when I'm like, oh, if I don't have any of those judgments around that, and I just ask, are you willing? Then if he says no, I'm not a bad person for having asked. He just wasn't willing. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that.
That's right. That's right. Because, I have this similar experience. And if I don't do that first in my mind, then I'm being run by my own guilt, and then I'm passive aggressive or
Mhm.
manipulative, whatever, because I've already
Yeah.
decided that I'm bad or they're bad, whoever I'm with.
Mhm.
But what you're saying here is a great example of why embodiment is so powerful as a relationship to the mind, because those sensations, like you said, is the turnaround's quicker for you now. And I
Mhm.
find the same thing because I have my body now, because now my body shows me sensationally when my mind is off. Whereas if
Yeah.
I didn't have that before, I didn't have this like added tool to say, like, barometer of sensation, right?
Yeah.
Such a wake up call for me, like the sensation. It's like an alarm.
Yeah. Alarm is a really good word for it. It does feel alarming sometimes.
Yes. Like those old alarms that shake off the counter, that are really loud. You get that panic through your body. So when you really drop into that, it's like something lights up because it wants you to
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, I noticed this. So that's what the little things. That's like, oh, I said a little thing that didn't feel very good for either of us. I was up to something, or whatever. And with the bigger things, when I'm in an active conflict, or I'm in, active judgment of someone else, I'm projecting my crap all over this person, and my judgments have their name all over it.
Mm-hmm.
Self-righteousness is it's just one of my favorite things. It's like so satisfying to be right about everything. And my body doesn't like for me to be in self-deception in that way. And it's easy to override it for me. I have many, many decades of practice. So self-deceptions, they go totally easy tool for me. And if I'm actually listening, my body's like, it wouldn't hurt this much if you just dropped the load.
Mm, mm. That's so important to me, because when we talk about the mind and we think of ego, or we think of
Mhm.
trauma ego, or all these things that run us mentally, they're beyond the physical realm. They don't have boundaries because there's no physical thing to hit or feel or rub up
Yeah.
against. So they can really believe, I love dominating. They can actually believe they like to dominate.
Mhm.
Yet when there's a relationship to the body, no body actually likes to dominate. It's like,
Oh,
even when you study, people who are actually psychotic, they experience like a neurological condition where they can't even feel the sensation of remorse. So if they could, they wouldn't be able to do what they were doing. So I
yeah.
find it so interesting that we notice we don't actually like to dominate. It's quite stressful and painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-righteousness actually physically feels pretty horrible.
Yes.
And and I don't use the word acceptance very often, but I'm going to use it for, for sloppy ease right now. But but acceptance has a physically peaceful sensation to it. This is something I'm learning recently.
Hmm. Even you saying that, my breath went so deep, because it really does. It's like, and I find it interesting, I find time very interesting and disorienting, because acceptance is like a second by second experience. For me, it's not this thing of like, I have to accept the world. There's ideas of what we're supposed to accept, but it's like, can I just accept sitting here right now with like the saliva in my mouth and my water there and you on the screen, and this, if I could just start here, then I build capacity for the next second to accept something. And it's kind of like a
Yeah.
second by second approach, I find, when I'm doing it
Yeah.
in a way that feels good.
Yeah, this is just a moment. Yeah, that's how I felt getting on this call with you, um, knowing that you would understand and probably offer rescheduling. I was like, we could just be here,
Mm.
and now I'm having a great time. Like the grief doesn't go anywhere, and it's I'm not fighting against it, and I wasn't judging myself like I need to be different here with you. Like I could just be here,
That's right. That's right.
and it's a lot more peaceful than judging myself for not being somewhere else in my
Mm.
process, or not being
Mhm.
a different way for our call. Like just
Yes.
here we are.
Yes. Yes. And I really, really appreciate that. I find it so, one of the reasons I love doing the work that I do is I get to create this like social culture for myself to hang out with every week.
Yes.
Like the groups I do and the courses and this membership coming up, like I get to just be with people doing this. So it
Mhm.
becomes so normal. And then when I'm in the world outside of this little bubble that I'm part of, I see the lengths we go to not show people we're feeling. And
Yeah.
it always shocks me back into reality of like, oh, that's not everyone's reality. They're allowed to just unencumberedly feel, just feel. And
Yeah.
so when I saw you feeling and you were willing to stay here, it was so nice to know that, because sometimes we don't have the capacity to feel in front of someone else. We just don't have that capacity. And
Yeah.
rescheduling's fine, but you did have it. And I thought that was so enlightening and beautiful for me.
Wow. And not everyone feels, and I'm going to use another word I don't use very often, but not everyone feels safe to do that with. Not that it's your responsibility to, you can't create the safety that's inside me. And also I would be less willing to share myself and my feelings with you knowing that they were unwelcome, or that if you didn't have the capacity to be with me and were up to subtle things to try and change where I am for your own comfort.
Mm,
um I may have made a different decision, but I was talking to Ben before and I was like, oh, it's Luis, and I can just be.
Mm.
And I know that we'll both be okay and it'll be a wonderful conversation no matter what. And he was like, it's amazing that you have created a world where people can just be with each other, like in these conversations that you have. So yeah, I've also created a similar bubble for myself, and the airport and the airplane were not that bubble. And that was just a wild experience.
I can really imagine that right now. I I was supposed to fly to Atlanta, Georgia,
Mhm.
this last weekend, and I was standing in. My daughter had to get a PCR test to go back to school.
Mhm.
We were standing in this long line, and there were all these people in this clinic, and I suddenly felt this feeling in my body that was like, you don't have capacity to get on a plane and go to Atlanta. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it felt such a like a relief to say, oh, I don't have the capacity for that. And
Yeah.
so when you were just saying, if you're with someone who, like, I love how you said that, because it got a bit distilled. And I like that. It started with, I don't feel safe with that person, and it ended with, that person doesn't have capacity for my state. And I really think that's when we talk about safety, or
Mhm.
this person feels good, or I don't like this person, we're really talking about capacity.
Yeah.
And so it's a really smart move to say, oh, they don't have capacity for me, I'm not going to show up. That's a smart move, right? Versus like pushing through.
It feels infinitely more compassionate for myself and for the other. Like,
Yes.
it's responsible for myself. I can take care of myself in this. And if somebody doesn't have capacity, that's not a character flaw, and it's not unkind of them. It's just it, the sovereignty of their body.
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly what I find most profound about body sovereignty, is capacity is also up to the body. And it's like responding to my body's capacity eventually builds it,
Mhm.
but it's still my body's capacity. I can't choose to be more loving if I don't have the energy to in that moment, and I can't force them to. And
Yeah.
it's really beautiful to learn that. And you don't feel so, um, you don't feel like there's something you did wrong. You just realize, oh, okay, we're all here together doing this thing, and your body can't do it right now,
Yeah.
right?
I just realized my phone is wanting to shut itself down pretty soon. I didn't expect to be on my phone for this call. How would you like to proceed, knowing that I probably only have a couple minutes? I can plug in and come back.
I'd say your phone
Okay.
is really good, because we're actually at the end anyway. I was just about to say how beautiful this has been, and I just love speaking with you and having you here. It's the second time I've ever spoken with you, and I just feel like I've known you for so long. So that's always really touching. Um, I'm just happy. I'm happy to have been with you today, and that you came and shared with us. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us anything you want to say, anything you're doing that you want to promote or ask about, or
I'm just grateful. I'm in a place I don't know that I have a lot more to share, but to be able to speak gratitude into this moment feels really important. So thank you. Thank you for sharing conversation with me. Thank you for your work in the world. I appreciate you so much. Um, you have had a profound impact on Ben, and you haven't even met him yet, on me and the way that we relate to ourselves and each other. Um, it's a it's a gift. Thanks.
I'm so moved by that. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be seeing you soon, okay?
Yes. Oh, good. Yes, that's true.
Maybe before then we'll have a little chat.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you for this.
Thank you. Bye.